Hey everyone, it's great to connect with you again today. On Sunday, we continue our summer worship schedule, outdoors at 8:45, indoor streaming at 11. Sunday school has concluded for the summer. This Sunday, I'll be preaching from Leviticus 23 and 24, thinking about the holy life of a rhythm. And in the 11 o'clock service, we'll honor our 6th grade catechism class. Last week, I went through my first stress test. I'd had a few symptoms that might tilt toward a heart issue, and because the symptoms are in the context of a family history with cardiovascular issues, it seemed a reasonable thing to do. As some of you may know, it's a little strange being hooked up with wires walking on a treadmill. I could see all my vital signs on the screen. I watched them change as the treadmill belt increased speed and was raised into more of an uphill position. And that got me thinking. It's an interesting thing to volunteer to put oneself in the middle of stress. We spend so much of our lives doing everything we can to avoid stress, and rightly so. Stress has a way of harming us physically, emotionally, relationally, spiritually. And as we all know, we don't really have to go looking for stress, nor do we have to create stress. The reality of life is that stress has a way of finding us. Some stress comes on us in our homes and relationships. We hurt each other, we disappoint each other, and we do it with far too much regularity. Stress comes on us in our work, meeting deadlines, fulfilling expectations, making a good impression, trying to prove that we're a valuable part of the team, trying to prove that we're worthy of what we're engaged to do. And stress comes to us in the church. Even if no one ever says a word, something in us feels the pressure of measuring up, of being worthy, of being good enough. And then there's the stress of living as fallible people in a fallible, broken world, a world in which circumstances and difficulties, pain and struggle seem to wash over us like waves of the sea in a mounting storm. Now, granted, there are some kinds of stress that can be helpful and productive. There's a kind of stress that isn't debilitating but motivating. There's a kind of stress that energizes, a kind of stress that enables us to help others in the ups and downs of their journey. But for most of us, stress is the opposite. And because of that, I don't believe that God causes negative stress. God doesn't create human beings to feel the kind of stress that harms us, confuses us, paralyzes us, or destroys us. But like all things, God, who does not cause bad things, is the master of bringing good, even healing, out of these things. David writes in Psalm 26:2, "Test me, Lord, and try me. Examine my heart and my mind." David writes these words in the context of accusations about his love for God, and his solution is for God to put him to the test. To ask God to put him to the test, to examine him, the direction, the health of his heart and mind. Now, the purpose of a stress test is to see how strong and healthy the heart is. You may not have symptoms, you may not have a reason to think that there's a problem, but the only way to know for sure is to do the test. Until you're hooked up to the machine, until you get your heart rate going fast enough, until you can see it on the EKG, you just never quite know. And sometimes, certainly not always, but sometimes, I wonder if God allows us to face times of stress in order to enable us to learn a couple of things. One, to get a clearer picture of our spiritual hearts. Not to look for perfection, but to confirm that we're on a good path, that we're facing in the right direction, and to give thanks to God for his grace that continually enables us. Or to confirm that we're not in such a good place, and to acknowledge that we need God to do his healing, restoring work in us. And second, to be reminded, perhaps to learn for the very first time, that no matter what, God is always, always, always faithful. We can count on him when we're in a good place and when we're not, when we're at peace and when we're struggling, when life is great and when it's not so great. We can assume that God will always be faithful, but sometimes it's only in the test that we know for sure. I'm happy to report that I passed my stress test with flying colors, no problems whatsoever, and I am very grateful to God for that. I can't say, however, that my spiritual stress tests are always like that. But I do know that sometimes it's necessary to be tested because it helps me to be more honest about where I am, and even more because it reminds me that whatever the results, God is always faithful to bring healing and restoration through his wondrous grace. Father, we thank you for your grace to help us see ourselves as we are, and even more to see you as you are. May we be ever willing to open ourselves to you so that we might see you more clearly and trust you more wholeheartedly. Amen. Thanks again for joining me. Have a wonderful day.